Hello and welcome to another episode of the Energy Exchange. My name is Jarrod Leak and I'm the CEO of A2EP. With the Energy Exchange, we're looking to bring to you a series of brief conversations about the energy transition ahead for the commercial and industrial sectors, and of course with a focus on energy productivity and decarbonisation. Joining me today, we have Liam McWhirter from Origin Zero, and Liam is the General Manager for Enterprise Partnerships. Liam, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jarrod. Great to be here.
And why don't we start off with Origin Zero, a relatively newly established entity within Origin. Please tell us about the new entity.
Yeah, so Origin Zero was established just over 2 years ago, really with the mandate to help our large business customers accelerate to zero. And we took a view internally that the large business segment would be one of the first to sort of transition and decarbonise across their operations. So we partner with a lot of those large customers and provide a range of integrated solutions, from solving their traditional commodity needs right through to some of the energy as a service and leading decarbonisation initiatives.
It certainly seems like you guys are on the cutting edge here of decarbonisation. Could you tell us a little bit about the trends, what's emerging trends with decarbonisation, and some of the key drivers that you're seeing from your customers to decarbonise?
Yeah, certainly. So a lot of our large customers are publicly listed, on the ASX and have public targets around their net zero transition. So they're facing sort of increasing pressure from investors, their own customers, to transition and accelerate their decarbonisation journey. So that's one driver. The other driver, if you think about the energy market, we're in a new period of sort of increased volatility that's playing through, and we saw that most recently in June with some of the high prices in Victoria. And so that's another driver for large businesses around how they can protect themselves in those periods of volatility, but also monetize the opportunity they have from different assets across their operation. And if you think about some of our major segments within the large business market, we've got the industrial sector. Think about that as large cement processing or lime processing. They use a huge amount of gas for heat purposes, across their operation. So a lot of those operators are thinking about, transitioning from gas to electric, whether that be heat pumps or electric boilers. So we're seeing that in our industrial segment. Within our retail, property and manufacturing segment, we're seeing a lot around refrigeration and how they can optimize refrigeration assets, either through playing into the market around those assets. And then finally, with our local councils and government sector, we're seeing a lot around distributed energy. So things like solar, battery storage, to protect them from that volatility that I spoke about earlier and enable them to become more self-sufficient and actually play into some of those market structures.
Sounds very interesting. And you mentioned before about them utilising their assets better. Is that what you mean? Their refrigeration assets, their own battery assets? That's where you got coming in to help with that utilisation?
Yeah, definitely. Like we'll play a role in partnering with these organisations to assess their operation and understand how they're operating those assets and determine how those assets can help improve their overall business operation. So an example like that might be a cement processing facility that has a cement grinder that has a level of flexibility to it that can participate in the demand response market through Origin's virtual power plant. So, we've got a customer that's based in Queensland, and in periods of sort of high volatility and peak prices, they're able to, leverage that asset to sort of take it offline for a period of time to help stabilise the grid, and all of that's automated through our VPP, and then they can sort of monetize some new revenue streams from that, whilst also supporting to stabilise the grid as the whole grid transitions over the next decade as well.
Now, Liam, it does sound a bit like you may be controlling their processes. There must be some pushback there in that sort of space. How are you going with that transition with these customers?
Yeah, like a lot of these large customers are very sophisticated and have a good understanding of the energy market and also a deep understanding of their operations. So we do that on a basis of clear trust and transparency, and we don't do anything without their consent, for example. And the beauty in what what we've established in the VPP is that there's transparency for the customer, and they can see their asset in real time and can see how that asset's performing, either for their core operation or playing into the energy market. And to give you one example of that, Jarrod, Coles is one of our sort of flagship partners that we're supporting them on a broader alliance partnership with, and that is seeing us deploy solar and batteries across 100 of their shopping centres. And within those shopping centres, we're supporting them with their participation in the FCAS market, which sort of helps stabilise the grid through their refrigeration assets. And in doing so, we're very conscious to meet their food safety standards. So they've got really clear criteria that they need to uphold for their customers. And so we define that up front, and therefore we meet that as a minimum, and then at the same time are able to orchestrate those assets on the VPP to play into the market. So it's very much not a one-way approach to this. It really is balanced with the customer.
So you're doing work for industrials like Visy, you've got the supermarkets like Coles. Any other areas, sectors that you're supporting?
Yeah, I think in the council and local government sector, it's a really interesting space. We're seeing a lot of demand from councils to help support their transition. And so one of those is Logan City Council in Queensland. It's one of the fastest growing councils nationally, and they've got really strong ambitions to transition to a net zero future as quickly as possible. So we've entered I think one of Australia's first multi-scope agreements with a council that will see us provide renewable energy for them. It will also see us provide distributed assets across their site, set of assets they have, whether they be water treatment plants, and that includes sort of solar and battery storage. I think what's unique in that one is the scale of their ambition. So they're looking at a 5 megawatt battery storage facility that will then orchestrate on the VPP for them to play in to those different revenue streams that are now available for these operators. And then there's the community-facing aspects of that program. So EV charging network that's being rolled out right across the facility. So it's really bringing together, the core aspect of their operation right through to the sort of frontline community exposure in the EV charging space.
That's just one council. We've got hundreds to go, and they're motivated too. Yeah. So this, hopefully some more in the pipework there as well to help them transition.
Yeah, certainly. And what we're seeing is huge demand from them to meet the needs of their ratepayers and their community stakeholders. And it becomes a real point of difference for these councils if they're able to sort of talk to what they're doing in this space.
Good to hear. Good to understand that. And so Coles is obviously on the journey. That's great. But there is a lot of businesses out there, and you may say it's an analysis paralysis issue. They've got a lot of people knocking on their door saying, do this, try that. What would you say to those businesses? How do they get started? How do they take those first steps?
Yeah, so their first steps are really understanding the detailed data at the site upon which they can make sort of informed decisions on. So we'll partner with organisations and undertake an initial carbon assessment, and a lot of that leverages our Energy Zone Insights platform that we've established for large businesses. So they get an understanding by half-hourly intervals and then 5-minute intervals, where are they using their energy and for what purpose. And so it's bringing those insights through to the right stakeholders to understand, okay, this particular plant is operating at this capacity and is costing you this much, but also contributing to sort of carbon emissions at this level. And so really it's around grounding them in a baseline understanding of their carbon assessment, and then from there defining what's the optimal solution. But that's going to be very different for each business because, as I mentioned earlier, there's a range of targets that organisations have out there, whether they be 2028, 2030 or 2035. And so it's working with that baseline data and then building up to where they want to get to and determining the right path to get there.
Sounds like a good methodology you got laid out, and couldn't agree more on the data. We see so many decisions being made incorrectly because they don't have the data, especially when it comes to things like renewable heat, looking to upgrade and get off gas and maybe to electrify with some of these newer technologies and what have you. Obviously, A2EP very focused on renewable heat. Where do you see this and the importance of renewable heat in this transition?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the emerging risks more broadly in the energy market is the gas shortfall position that, AEMO have been very public about over the next sort of decade. And there's, different views on the time horizon of that, but clearly we've seen some upward pressure around gas prices, and therefore for large businesses to start to think about different sources of heat for their operation and diversify, possibly away from gas. There's no doubt gas is super critical through the transition, but at a customer level, thinking about different sources of heat generation. And one anecdote for you is we've got customers in the hospitality sector that are actively looking at sort of electrifying their larger industrial kitchens, which has always been a challenge. Chefs and cooks of the world love gas for their heating purposes. But as some of that kit is nearing end of life, they're now thinking about larger electrification options and renewable sources for that heat. So yeah, I definitely think it's key.
Excellent. We're on the same page, thank goodness. And so Origin Zero, you've got quite a suite of products and service and solutions here, but you've got to work with others, and there's got to be no doubt a partnership approach. How are you leveraging different partnerships to bring in the right skills and to deliver these solutions?
Yeah, so as I touched on earlier, we've got partners that can support with the carbon assessment process to help large businesses, gain that baseline understanding. We've also then got partners at the top end of the scale when we talk about energy as a service, and whether that's compressed air solutions or electric boilers, or thinking about steam replacement options. So we've got a partnership with Climatech Zero that are doing a lot of work, particularly with Visy in that space. And then through the broader suite of solutions that we have, whether it be distributed assets like solar and batteries, we've got a range of sort of installation partners that exist right across the East Coast and some on the West Coast as well. And then, we're fortunate to be able to leverage, in-house capability through our VPP that we really feel differentiates ourselves in the market as well.
Compressed air, glad to hear that one. It's one of the most inefficient ways to use energy. Very reliable, but wastes a lot. So you've done something with a service there on compressed air?
Yeah, like through our partnership with Climatech Zero, as I mentioned, they've implemented a range of projects with Visy that have a big source and a big need for compressed air solutions. And I think the beauty in this type of approach is that through Origin and our partnership, we'll take on the risk and the performance risk for those assets, and also contribute from a capital point of view. So, access to capital is a real challenge in the market at the moment, but through this partnership, we're able to sort of take that on and provide a capex-free option, and therefore think about that as sort of smoothing the investment for a compressed air upgrade for that particular site. And that also comes with performance standards and reliability. So it's one thing to implement the kit, but then it's also another thing to stand behind it over the life of the term, whether that be 10 years or 15 years. So those are some of the features in some of the projects that have been delivered specifically with Visy, but a range of other customers as well.
Brilliant. Liam, we're always hearing about the barriers to this change and the transition, and it sounds like you guys are just knocking them down. You're there, you're putting your money where your mouth is, you're helping them with risk, helping them on a pathway. So this is a great story, and wish you all the success here at Origin Zero. Liam McWhirter, thank you so much for joining us on the Energy Exchange.
Great, thanks for having me, Jarrod.